Koppel, host of the Time for Coffee podcast, where you get firsthand career advice into the jobs and industries that interest you the most. And before we start today's show, I have a quick favor to ask you. If you haven't already, I'd be incredibly grateful if you'd give us a rating and a review on iTunes. And if you're like me, you need to do it now because you'll forget later and because it's the best way to help others who may be in search of career advice to find this free resource. So press pause if you haven't done it and do it right now. I'll wait. Thanks so much and enjoy today's show. Hey there, Java junkies. Welcome back to another episode of T4C. If you're interested in learning more about engineering, specifically what a systems engineer and a project manager at a huge company like Lockheed Martin is like, then this is the episode for you because my next guest has worked at Lockheed Martin Space for over 7 years and he's had some incredibly interesting opportunities, which we're going to get into. But before I introduce you to Stephen Liu, I want to make sure you've signed up for the Java Junkies Journal. That's Time for Coffee's newsletter that showcases upcoming guests and it gives you career insights and inspiration. Just head over to the Time for Coffee website at time4coffee.org and the sign up box is right there. Now, my Java lovers, please grab your mug and take a chug of your favorite caffeinated brew because it's time for another caffeinated career conversation. And my guest is Stephen Liu, a project manager at Lockheed Martin Space, part of the huge Lockheed Martin Corporation. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's an American aerospace, arms, defense, security, and advanced technologies company. It's employing over 110,000 people around the world. It's ginormous. Stephen first started at Lockheed in 2014, right out of college, as a systems engineer associate. 3 years later, he was accepted into a highly competitive engineering leadership development program known as ELDP. This is still at Lockheed. It's a 3-year job rotation program for early career, high potential engineers. During his time in the ELDP, Stephen completed 3 separate rotations, one in risk management, the other in mission operations, and the third in project management. Then in August of 2020, Stephen was promoted to become a project manager of missile obsolescence. See, I can't even say it. I have no idea what it is, but I can't wait to learn about it. And he was focused and is focused on supply chain projects. He is managing multi-million-dollar projects to ensure issues with the supply chain are taken care of before they would impact production. And in case you think that job doesn't keep Stephen busy enough, it doesn't. Because in his free time, Stephen's side hustle is as a LinkedIn influencer, a content creator, as well as a career coach. Needless to say, all of this was quite surprising to those who knew Stephen back in college. I'm guessing maybe even back in high school, because back then, Stephen was a self-described introvert. He didn't like public speaking. He was afraid of it. Not anymore. Over the last several years, Stephen has worked hard to conquer that fear, and he now teaches others how to do the same. Stephen, welcome to Time for Coffee. Are you caffeinated on life and ready to go?
I am caffeinated. I am hyped to be here. And yeah, thank you, Andrea, for such a wonderful introduction. I need to get that transcript of it later so I can put it in my bio and share it for any other future needs there.
Oh, gosh. Well, happy to help. And as you and I were chatting just a few moments ago, you're not really a Java lover, are you?
No, I'm not. I never got used to drinking coffee. Never saw the need actually either.
So how the heck do you get out of bed at 5 o'clock in the morning every day?
I don't know. At this point, I think I'm just used to it. My very first job at Lockheed, my lead came into work at 5. So, obviously I didn't have to come in at 5, but, I said, well, I can't come in at 9 either. So we compromised at 6:30 or 7. So in order for me to meet that, I had to wake up at 5 a.m. So, I've been had, like Andrea said, had different jobs at Lockheed, but kept to that 5 a.m. wake up schedule. So I think just waking up and just knowing, hey, I got stuff I need to do today. Never got used to drinking coffee, so I guess I don't need it. And yeah, people are amazed. A lot of people ask me, how do you wake up so early and not have to drink coffee? And I said, I don't know. I'm just used to not having to drink any.
See, I love it. And maybe if I made you the coffee that I brew, because I grind my beans and I have a whole little ritual, it would probably be something you would like, but I wouldn't want to be the one that, I don't know, sullied your pure system with caffeine, Stephen. I want to, the body is a temple. All right. Stephen, that I interview professionals in dozens of different industries, and some of them do work in fields where I've worked before, or maybe have similar skill sets. And so I can actually envision myself doing their jobs. That is not the case here, my friend, because talking about engineering is actually pushing me out of my comfort zone, because I am not a math and science person. So I am stoked to learn from you. Don't laugh at me. So what the heck does a project manager of missile obsolescence mean? And what is missile obsolescence, Stephen?
Yeah, it's definitely a mouthful, and I can't even spell it right the first time, no matter what. But basically, I work on a missile defense program, and we have thousands of parts as part of our interceptor, part of our product here. And we want to make sure that there's a consistent and constant supply chain. But sometimes supplies go out of business. Sometimes certain materials go obsolete. So we want to have a head start of that. And we want to make sure these parts don't go obsolete, right? And that's part of the word of obsolescence. And we usually get a heads up from the supplier saying, hey, we're going to finish our current contract, but we're done after that. So let's say that's 2 years from now. So within those 2 years, we have to find an alternative source, make sure that part is qualified and meets all the requirements within those 2 years. So there's always that hard deadline at the end. There's a hard schedule deadline. But then you have to go find other sources. You have to go test them and qualify. So it's a very long process that may take longer than 2 years. And what if your schedule slips? What if things take longer? Then you're pretty much screwed. You're going to impact our production line. We need every single one of those thousands of parts for our product. So there's a lot of strategies that we use in project management. For example, we try to buy as much old material as much as possible to push out that, let's say, that 2-year deadline to maybe 4 years. So we have some breathing room. We try to find efficiencies. We try to expedite things in our schedule, see what we can do in parallel rather than in order. And so it's a lot of different, with project management, you have to look at so many different aspects of it, not just the schedule, but you have to look at the cost, look at the technical part of it, look at the quality and result of it. So there's a lot that we have to look at. But what we do is extremely important. We work in missile defense, so our product is extremely important to the needs of our soldiers, of our citizens here in the U.S. So we just need to make sure we have that consistent and constant supply chain. And if there's any issues, be able to mitigate them before we run out of parts.
Terrific. Thank you for that. That makes a lot of sense. So how many parts are you responsible for tracking?
So I am currently working on 3 different projects. So there's 3 different parts, unique parts. Some of these are multiple parts in different areas, but 3 unique parts where we have identified the replacement. We're in the process of qualifying it, going through testing, making sure it meets all the requirements. But we do have a whole team outside of that. We call them the surveillance team. So they scan everything. They scan across the board. They know every single part. They know when we're going to run out. And as part of that, if you see a bunch of parts are going to run out, let's say 4 years from now, instead of testing each part and finding replacement for every single one, it might be a good idea to do a redesign of a subsystem, because then you can have brand new parts, you can have increased capabilities as well. So personally, I manage 3 different projects, but we have a whole team that just looks across the board and gives us that heads up that, hey, we're going to run out this part 5 years from now or 3 years from now or whatever. And then we come up with strategies on how to solve that problem.
And how many project managers are there doing what you do at Lockheed?
So in terms of my program, there's at least dozens. And every single program with every single product we have, obsolescence is a big deal, right? Because you can't guarantee that you have a constant supply chain for 20 years, right, for the lifetime of your product. So, with project managers, there's so many of us here at Lockheed. I can't even give you a clear number. I can't even give you a ballpark, but there's a lot of project managers and there's a lot of program managers. as well.
So are you like amazing when it comes to the groceries that you need, staying on top of like laundry detergent and milk and eggs and all of that?
Definitely am. I'm a planner, so I'm a big list person. I like using Excel because I visualize things that way. And yeah, when I go shopping, let's say I need to get 5 things. I already mapped out the route I need to take in the store to get all I need, and I don't go buy anything extra. So if I could hold it all in my hands, I don't need a cart, and I don't bring a cart with me if I only need a couple items there. So no, you're exactly right in terms of the planning and having that list for grocery shopping.
Fantastic. So what would you say, back to work, are your roles and responsibilities as a project manager focused on supply chain projects, 3 of which you are currently juggling?
There's a lot of different parts that I need to look at, not parts, but different aspects of the project I need to look at as a project manager. And that was one of the biggest things I had to overcome and still get better as a project manager. My background is in engineering, so I'm focused on just the technical, create this drawing, update this, do that. So I'm only focused on one thing at a time. But as a project manager, you're looking at the same problem from 5 or 6 different perspectives. And that relates to the people I talk to on a weekly basis. So for example, I have meetings with the supplier multiple times a week just to make sure they're on track with maybe their procedure development. Maybe they're on track with their testing that they're doing right now, getting the results there. I have to go talk to our engineering team to make sure that what the supplier is doing is meeting our requirements. We review their test reports, we review their data, making sure it's what we expect. Then I meet with our finance team to make sure every single month, am I on budget? Am I within cost here on my project? If it looks like we're overspending, what are we doing to mitigate that? I meet with our planners who deal with the schedule. So I look at our projects and, okay, what's our deadline? How much margin do we need? If this task slips out 2 months, is that going to break our project? How are we going to mitigate that? And then I have to go present to program manager. I take all this information from the supplier, from my engineers, from finance, have to be able to understand all that information and present it in a way to program management and make sure that they understand, as well as our customer, meet with them on at least a weekly basis as well. So many different aspects I have to be on top of. Multiply that with 3 different projects. So when I started, they gave me 6 or 7 projects right off the bat. So I was talking about one project, what's going on with one project instead of this one. But as I got more comfortable in the role, kind of had to change the way my brain works. So instead of focused on one thing at a time, instead of pulling information from a single bucket, I have to have multiple buckets of information in my head and be able to switch quickly. So taught me a lot about being organized, taught me a lot about a different way of thinking to be efficient in what I do as a project manager.
Gosh, I would think, because you anticipated what my question was how do you keep from confusing the 3 projects? How do you like to organize yourself? You mentioned you like Excel. Are there any other management tools that have been helpful to you?
Yeah, so I started using Microsoft OneNote a lot when I started as well as a project manager. Just on a high level, just one tab for every single project I have. And then from each one, I break it down into the different types of meetings I have. So maybe I have a supplier meeting every week. Then I have finance information. Then I have schedule information. Then I have, maybe specific topics, right? If we have a hot issue within one, I create a specific tab for it. And just having all that information organized, and I can always refer to it because yes, I can save all the emails, but it's just so hard to find there. So keeping things organized as much as I can and knowing where things are, where I can always refer to it, because with these projects, there's always new people coming in. There's always, just in any role, engineers, finance, even suppliers, just being able to have all this background information and just have it ready to go whenever it comes in handy a lot. So I use Microsoft OneNote. I think there's a lot of different tools you can use out there. This is just something I have at work, and I've learned to really utilize it. I also use it as a to-do list because I can flag things and I can keep track of, these are things I need to follow up on. These are things I need to do, especially with across all these multiple projects. There's a lot of things that I need to follow up on.
And how long does the average project run?
Yeah, so these projects go for at least 2 to 3 years. They're the ones that I work on. And this is just the execution of it. There's at least 3 to 6 months, maybe even a year beforehand, where we're trying to create a contract with the government, or the government gives us a statement of work. We come up with a proposal. We give that to the government. We negotiate. We go back and forth. We agree on it. Then we get a contract. Then we turn that around. We got to work with the supplier because we have to have a contract with them because they do some of the work as well. So, just the execution part of it, just the qualification, just coming up with the test plan, running through the qualification testing, getting that plan approved. That's somewhere from 2 to 3 years, but you add at least maybe a year on top of all that with all the total planning stuff that comes before that.
And these projects right now that you're working on are for missiles?
Yes, for a missile defense program. So our product intercepts other missiles, before they hit whatever target that they're going after.
Got it. So take us into a typical day for you right now during the pandemic in Sunnydale, California. I take it you are working from home. You are not going into the office. What does a typical day look like for you?
So I do work from home. I would say every day is different. I do have sort of a typical week. A lot of the meetings I mentioned earlier, meeting with the suppliers, meeting with customer, with finance, with engineering, et cetera, those are more weekly meetings. So that's kind of how I plan out the week. So on a typical day, I got anywhere from 4 to 8 to maybe even 10 meetings sometimes, getting stats from different people, maybe even just ad hoc meetings, just, hey, let me get the technical team together. We got this update from our supplier. Let's talk about it. What's our path forward? What's our decision on it? So a lot of different meetings and just being efficient with that time. If there's any downtime, being able to review procedures, being able to look at our schedule and make sure that matches with what our supplier gave us. Looking at the finances, coming up with plans and mitigations if we're going to be over budget or if we're going to overrun our costs here. So every day is different. I would say each week you see a cycle in terms of a weekly basis. But even every week, you have all these different ad hoc meetings just because issues come up left and right.
Are those the tag ups that you mention in your resume? Because you talk about how you conduct weekly tag ups, and I'm guessing that's specific language unique to Lockheed, I'm guessing, with engineering, suppliers, finance planners, program management, and customers.
Exactly. Yeah. So I could just call it meeting. Maybe I should change it to meeting. But tag ups, they can be informal or they can be formal as well.
Got it. In reviewing your resume, and as you can tell, Stephen, I really reviewed it. A couple of things jumped out at me, and I'm not sure if this is something that is random or if, in fact, that may be one of the objectives, one of the measures of a job well done. And that is, I've noticed that you cite metrics showing that you have, in some cases, not only stayed within budget and on schedule, but in some cases, you finished a project 6 months ahead of the need date, as you did with the complete O-ring project. Or you found efficiencies, as you did on the EMI filter project. Are these KPIs, or these key performance indicators?
I would say those are a little more overall just results from the project. We do have monthly reviews of, as you could call them, KPIs. We use something called earned value management. I think it's a little more specialized within the defense world. But basically, it's just a ratio of how much you spent so far and what you plan on spending, and how much work did you plan on doing and how much work did you actually do. So it's a ratio basically where you want to be as efficient as possible. So the baseline is 1.00, where we did everything on time, everything on schedule. We spent exactly to the dollar what we spent. If you're at 1.10, we spent 10% less money than we planned to spend, and our schedule is on track. But if you're at 0.90, then we spent 10% more money than we anticipated, and now we got to figure out how to catch up. So those are the kind of the metrics I look at. But kind of the overall, you said the schedule savings, the completing projects early, those are just the overall project execution in terms of finding efficiencies and getting things done a lot sooner than we need them.
I just thought that was interesting because in many jobs, doing what is required, staying within budget is enough. But I think in corporate America, especially, if you come in under budget, if you find ways to save money, if you get your job done faster, this is how you will be promoted in that company. Would you agree with that?
Definitely. Yeah. If you're just there, if you're doing what your job asks you to do exactly, then you're just going to stay at the same level because you're not going above and beyond. You're not exceeding what you're supposed to be. And when it comes to that level of that promotion, you're looking at the next level. Can this person perform at the next higher level? And if you have the evidence that you have that, hey, I've done things faster, I found these efficiencies, I made things much more faster or much more efficient, that's justification for you. But if you're just doing exactly what you're being told and delivering things exactly what they asked for, then you're just doing your job. And that's yes, that's required, but that's nothing outstanding or that's nothing extraordinary special.
Yeah, you're just checking the box. Stephen, we may have listeners who are still in college right now, who think they want to go into engineering and work at a company like Lockheed Martin. What do you wish someone had told you about what this job and culture would really be like that was a surprise to you, maybe even after you started?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me, especially in my very first job coming right out of school, was I was worried that people weren't willing to help me because they were afraid I'm going to take over the job. Because here comes a new person, and I'm an older person, I'm about to retire, or this new person's much cheaper, they can do my job a lot cheaper. So that was kind of the mindset I went in, that I'm going to be on my own here. The team's not going to be supportive of helping me, but it was actually the complete opposite. And I've had 5 different jobs so far, but in every single job, everyone was extremely helpful. Everyone was extremely supportive, asking me how I can help. And I always return a favor, asking how I can help them. And that kind of shared knowledge, that kind of support is extremely important, because these older people who are looking to retire, they know they need to pass on their information, pass on their knowledge to the next generation in order to keep the program going, because it's such a legacy program. It's been going for so long. Once they retire, all that information's in their head. It's not in the company anymore. So that's the biggest thing I realized, that especially here at Lockheed, everyone's so supportive, everyone's so willing to help you. So, go in with that mindset that, hey, I'm here to make a difference. I'm here to contribute. And I'm here to learn. And people really resonate with that.
Wonderful. As I mentioned in the introduction, you were selected to join the Engineering Leadership Development Program, that 3-year leadership job rotation program for early career high potential engineers. How would you describe that experience for you? What kind of a difference do you think that it made or didn't make in your career?
Yeah, that was definitely the highlight of my career so far, I guess, on a whole. As part of the program, as you said, I got to do 3 different job rotations within 3 years. So every single year, I'm doing something different. I go to a different program. I go learn new skills. I go work with different people. Yeah, like I said, learn new skills. And every job is different. So I learned a lot in every single one of those roles. As part of this program, we also have leadership conferences every year. So all these different leadership development program participants, from engineers, from operations, from finance, all the different groups. We have a conference every single year. We all get together and we just go through leadership training, go through project management training, and just being in that environment surrounded by a lot of like-minded people with the similar drive, similar motivation really motivates me to hey, I need to get better. I need to be the best I can be. So overall, the job rotations definitely opened my perspective on the different opportunities I have here at the company, and also picked up new skills. And also the conference is just a huge networking opportunity. This is people from all around the country, all from our different sites, just have that huge networking opportunity and just having that learning opportunity as well at these conferences.
Excellent. At the top of your resume, I want to say it was like the upper third, you list out the soft skills and then the management skills that you've acquired. And I was surprised to see that you've listed out 4 management skills and 6 soft skills. The 6 soft skills included leadership, public speaking, communication, mentoring, teamwork, and presentation skills. Is that because soft skills are in fact more important than the hard, or was it simply because you were stating a fact?
I would think soft skills make a much bigger difference than the hard skills, because the hard skills you can just learn from Googling, from reading a book, from YouTube or whatever resources online. But the soft skills is just something you need to do, something you just have to try and practice and get better at. And that makes a huge difference, because if your soft skills are terrible, if you have no idea how to communicate, no idea how to listen, then no one wants to work with you because you're just hard to work with. So it doesn't matter if you're super smart, but if you just can't share that information, if you can't convey that information in a certain way so other people can understand, that you're stuck. So I really think the soft skills, like the ones you listed there, just show how well I can work with different types of people and how well I can work in different types of environment. And that makes me a lot more versatile and a lot more flexible, that I can just jump into any role. And that really helped when I was doing those rotations, because I was jumping from role to role every single year, just taking those same exact soft skills and applying them in just a different situation, but still having an impact no matter where I was.
I think that's really important for young people who are in the STEM field, especially to hear, because they may think, well, I've got all of this very technical knowledge and that's enough. But I know because I'm in the career space how important soft skills are. So I wasn't sure how much you were telegraphing that. It felt like you were. And now you're confirming that for me. So I'd like to flash back really quickly, Stephen, to when you were in college. You went to San Jose State University and you majored in computer engineering. I usually ask my guests if they knew what they wanted to do when they graduated, but I can see again, just by looking from your resume, that you did because you graduated in December 2013 and you joined Lockheed in January, 1 month later in 2014, as a systems engineering associate. So you knew what you wanted to do. When did you realize that you were more interested in systems engineering and less interested in the computer engineering? And was that a period of anxiety for you?
Yeah, I got a funny story to respond to your question here. So yes, I did study computer engineering, but even when I was in school, with computer engineering, it's half hardware and half software. I always enjoyed the hardware side more. Like I didn't mind writing software as long as it tied into hardware. So I don't mind writing code to control an RC car, make it move on its own. As you said, I graduated in December of that year, but I actually interviewed with Lockheed April of that year, so 8 months before. But what happened was Lockheed took so long to get back to me for that interview. Before they called me in for an interview, they had my old resume. So when I interviewed in April, they thought I was graduating in June. But I went to the interview and I said, hey, here's my resume. I'm graduating in December, not in June. So whatever slot they had me in as a software engineer in June, I couldn't fill it because I didn't graduate yet. So basically, I got a job offer 8 months after I graduated as a software engineer. And then in January, when they tried to put me in the team, figure out where to put me, the week before, the recruiter called me and said, hey, this team you're supposed to be in, they don't have any budget, so you're going to join this team. I had no idea who the old team was. I had no idea who the new team was. So I was like, okay, well, went into work the first day, no idea what I was going to be working on. And met with the manager. The manager never met me before. And on day 2, we walked through my resume, and he said, "Yeah, I got enough software engineers already, but Garrett needs a lot of help." And Garrett was the system integration lead in the lab, in the job I worked in. So he said, "Go follow Garrett around." So that's how I became a systems engineer. I didn't mind that first job at all. I really, really enjoyed that first job because it was very hands-on. I got to touch hardware. I got to install software. It was a very hands-on job, especially right out of college. It was really what I was looking for. So that's how I started as a systems engineer and never looked back. Actually, about 2 years into that job, I asked my manager, can I change my title into systems engineer because that reflects what I'm doing rather than what a software engineer does. And I'm being compared to other software engineers. So made that title switch. And as I said, really, really enjoyed that first job. I didn't mind switching over to systems anyways because I was more of a hardware person anyways. But yeah, no, that's kind of what happens. Your career takes twists and turns that you don't have control of, but you just got to roll with it. And every opportunity is a learning opportunity.
Yes. And in this case, it turned out for the best. It really did. When did you realize that engineering was what you wanted to do? We talked quite a bit in the Espresso Shots episode about the importance of passion and telegraphing that passion to hiring managers, to recruiters, if this is what you really want to do. And that's hard to do if you've been forced to study engineering, maybe by your family or, some kind of pressure. When did you realize, Stephen, that this was something you felt passionately about?
Yeah, I would say it's around high school. I was just thinking, what AP classes do I want to take, right? What class credits do I want to get for college that would help me, graduate a lot sooner and get that earlier knowledge? So at that point, I wanted to focus a little more on engineering, right? Other than compared to something like in business or liberal arts. I always wanted to get an engineer because, as I said, my first job was very hands-on. That's what I really enjoyed. So I always had enjoyed that hands-on aspect of engineering. So I ended up taking AP Physics my junior year in college, and before senior year, you're kind of applying to colleges. So I applied for engineering.
You meant junior year in high school. Sorry to interrupt. You said junior year in college. So you took physics your junior year, AP Physics your junior year in high school.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. And senior, I'm applying to colleges, and I was thinking, well, I want to do engineering, but what kind of engineering do I want to do? I live in San Francisco Bay Area, basically Silicon Valley. So I said, hey, well, maybe go study computer engineering. I didn't study any coding beforehand. That would have really helped when I took my first coding class in college, but I stuck with it and just having that passion of, this is what I want to do, right? This is why I'm studying engineering. I like being hands-on, like solving problems. I like figuring out how things work. So that really helped motivate me and help encourage me and push me throughout college, especially when the classes got tougher.
So something else that existed back when you were in college that you weren't yet motivated to change was your fear of public speaking. On your LinkedIn profile, you describe yourself as shy introvert, and then there's a little right arrow pointing to the words public speaker. So I'm assuming that's signaling the growth. You have transitioned from being a shy introvert to a public speaker. Can you talk a little bit, Stephen, about how and why you made that transition and in fact started a hashtag 52-week challenge to post videos every week on LinkedIn back in 2018. And I believe, if this number is current, you've actually created over 140 videos sharing career tips and advice. And in effect, you've been mentoring thousands of people over the last several years.
Yeah, excellent point there. So yes, I started as a shy introvert, came from that engineering background where you're sort of awkward and in conversations, awkward in public, but you're a smart person. You just don't like talking to people. And also coming from an Asian background where you're taught at an early age to, respect elders and be respectful, be quiet, don't speak up. So that just ties all together, just being a shy introvert. And in 2020, actually it started in 2017, I started developing a growth mindset and wanted to share my goals with as many people as possible to hold myself accountable to achieve them. So I started writing monthly articles on LinkedIn to help me achieve my goals by holding myself accountable and sharing with as many people as possible. So near the end of 2017, I'm still in that growth mindset, and I'm thinking, well, obviously the next progression is to do something weekly on LinkedIn. But what can I do weekly? Around the same time, I had a good friend of mine posted the first ever video I've seen on LinkedIn. And it was just him with the cell phone in the park. I can't remember what he was talking about. So I said, weekly videos. But then what is 52 things I can talk about? Because I'm a planner. What's 52 things I can talk about for my weekly videos? And I decided that, well, I've been to a lot of presentations and seminars and have mentors. And I, taken notes throughout all these different presentations. So I can possibly come up with 52 things to talk about. So that jump-started my 52-week challenge to create videos every single week on LinkedIn, and in 2018, just pulled one from the list, did a video about it. I will admit the first 25 or 26 were really, really terrible. My first one, I didn't even look at the camera. I kept looking away. My voice was super quiet, and I just kept stuttering. It was just, looking back, it was really bad, but that's the best I could do at that point. And I just powered through, persevered, whatever you want to call it. And every single week, just noticing, because I go through my videos, noticing my tendencies, fixing them, getting more confident, getting better at public speaking, getting more comfortable with it as well. So I went through that whole challenge in 2018, decided to do another 52-week challenge in 2019, where I didn't have a list anymore because I ran out of things to talk about. But I talked about kind of what I was dealing with, what I was going with in my life at that time. I started a new rotation, so I talked about what I do for a new job. I was doing grad school at the same time, so I talked about stress management, time management, how to be efficient with your time. I just came up with whatever things that I was dealing with at the time for my videos. And that really helped make those videos a lot more personable and make my stories, what I share, a lot more relatable and resonated with the much larger audience. And, as you said, I've been doing weekly videos ever since. I did that all throughout 2020. I started experimenting with different types of videos. I did some cooking videos in the beginning of the year that maybe I should bring back. I did some 10-second tip videos. But I think it's way over 140 videos at this point. If you count every single week and in 3 years, that's about 150. Now I'm doing my new 52-week challenge this year is to do a weekly LinkedIn live stream. So I just did number 10 last week, and I have guests lined up to be guests on my show all the way through September. So I'm just going through that, and it's a different type of challenge.
Wow!
You have to be live. You can't just record a bunch of videos in advance and post them. So it's a new challenge every single week, having a new topic, having a new guest, and being available to do that live stream.
I'm just super impressed by everything you've said, especially the fact that you've booked out to September. It's not even the middle of March yet. That is some serious planning. My hat is off to you, Stephen. What advice do you have, Stephen, for other shy introverts who may cringe at the idea of going on camera, even if only on their phone, but want to get over that fear? What would you recommend they do?
I would say two things. don't overthink anything and don't worry about what other people will think. And these two sort of tie together. So especially with video, we're very self-conscious about how we look and how we sound because we normally don't look at ourselves in the mirror and we normally don't record our voices to hear what we sound like. So especially with that first video, you're like, hey, I look a little funny. What's that mole? Or your voice, my voice sounds off or something. Don't worry about that. Worry about the message. Worry about the words you're trying to say and put that out there. And especially with video, it'll never be perfect. Accept the fact your video will never be perfect, especially the first one. You're going to stutter a bit. You're going to trip over your words, whatever. Just post it. And why I like posting on LinkedIn is because it's real people, it's real profiles. No one's hiding behind a fake name or an anonymous name. And you're just going to, and because it's such a professional platform, people are going to be supportive. People are going to be positive. So don't worry about, would anyone watch my video? Would anyone care about my message? Or what are people going to think? Are they going to judge me how I look or how I sound? No. Don't worry about that at all. Just put it out there and see what the results are after the fact. So just do it. Don't assume what people are going to say. Don't assume what people are going to think. You don't know that until you actually post it. So that first step is definitely the hardest. I had that first video ready to go and I just couldn't upload it. I sat there for 15 minutes, but I'm glad I did. And I'm glad I actually carried through with that 52-week challenge because I told everyone in that first video, I'm going to do 51 more videos that year. So I'm actually glad I did that and I followed through on it and brought me to where I am today, being on a podcast and having a weekly LinkedIn live show.
And what other benefits have you gotten out of pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and developing really more of a comfort level with public speaking, not thinking twice about doing it live, not thinking twice about coming up with guests for a year, just doing it? What have you seen the changes in the way that you carry yourself at work, at the way you act in the office?
Yeah, it definitely does. Especially in my job as a project manager, I have to communicate, I have to talk with so many people. And if I just lack that confidence where it's like, oh no, I got to go talk to the program manager, I got to talk to the director, or I got to talk to the customer and I'm just nervous, that shows. And as a project manager, you can't really show you lack confidence. If you're not confident in what you're saying, and it's like, oh yeah, I don't know if we'll make it on time, or I don't know if we can deliver, it just shows you don't have control over your project. So I think with the weekly videos, with the public speaking, it just helped give me a lot of self-confidence in myself and just being comfortable in any situation where I have to speak in public. And I'm not speaking on stage to 200 people every time I present, but just speaking to the audience, whoever it is, just knowing that, hey, I'm just here to share my message and share my status or share whatever my project is, what's going on in my project. And just having confidence when I speak, that goes a long way. And I've gone through different types of deep dives and audits and things like that, and going through these different mock interviews, people told me that, hey, you sound really confident. And I said, hey, I really had no idea what I was talking about. But just having that confidence, when I'm speaking and explaining my numbers, explaining our decisions or justifications, that goes a long way to show that you are confident, you know what you're talking about.
Well, I think you're fantastic. So 2 final T4C questions, Stephen. Could you share a time in your professional life when you struggled? Maybe you even failed at something. And the most important part here is how you persevered, how you were able to push through to the other side, and if there was a lesson that you learned in the process.
That's a great question, and that's one of my favorite questions to answer. As we talked about earlier, I got selected to the Engineering Leadership Development Program, or ELDP for short, 3 years into the company, but I actually applied for it 2 years into the company. I applied, I made it to the interview, but I wasn't selected. And I was super bummed at that point because everyone else that made it, I knew them personally. Like, they were good friends. I just really wanted to be in that same cohort as them. But, unfortunately, I didn't make it. But what I did was I asked the program manager for feedback. I said, what can I do better in the interview to get selected next year? He said, you need more project management experience and you need more leadership experience, which I thought was ironic because that's why I'm going to the leadership development program to get more leadership experience. But anyway, need more project management experience, need more leadership experience. For the project management experience, I decided to go get my master's in engineering management. So I started that soon after, within 6 to 9 months of that. But to get that leadership experience, I was thinking, how can I get that? I'm an entry-level employee engineer. I report to my lead who's been in the same team for 25 years. He knows everything about it. I can't just go in and become the lead. So what can I do? I decided to participate and join one of our employee resource groups at Lockheed Martin. So we have these different employee resource groups that are called ERGs for short, for all these different minority groups. So there's one for women, there's one for African American, for Hispanic, or LGBT. So I joined the one called PAN, or Professional Asian American Network. So I went to the first, the whatever monthly meeting they had, said, hey, I want to take on a leadership position here. So I became the mentoring and professional development chair. This was in mid to late 2016, 2 years into the company. So as part of that role, I organized speed mentoring events. I organized lunch and learn. I organized guest speakers to come and they present. If we have a lunch and learn or guest speaker, they talk about their topic. But if I'm doing a speed mentoring event, I have to go find mentors. I have to go reach out to executives and directors and say, hey, we need your help in supporting this speed mentoring event. And on the day of the event, I have to introduce the speaker. I have to be on stage and introduce the speaker. I have to facilitate the speed mentoring event. I have to speak up so people can hear my voice. So that really helped me start building up that confidence in myself, start building up those public speaking skills, and then which motivated me to do my 52-week challenge. If I didn't have that confidence in myself to put myself on the internet or on LinkedIn, I wouldn't have started my 52-week challenge. So fast forward all that, because I got rejected from the leadership program, which got me to get involved in PAN, which got me leadership skills and public speaking skills, which inspired me to do weekly videos, and now I'm doing weekly live streams. And now I joined podcasts. I joined all these opportunities to speak. So that one failure, was a catalyst to all these different things. And just to wrap up the story, I again applied to the leadership program the following year, made it to the interview, and I actually got selected. And a few months later, we had the new class together, and I happened to sit next to the program manager during dinner, and he told me that last year we gave feedback to 15 people, and you were the only one that followed through. And within the first 10 seconds of the interview, when you said, hey, I listened to your feedback, I'm starting my master's right now in engineering management, I joined PAN to take on a leadership position, within those 10 seconds, we already knew we were going to give you a spot. We just had to go through the interview. So, the major takeaway here is failure is okay. Always ask for feedback, because that's how you learn. And, that's how you get better as well. And because you follow through on the feedback, you come back again, you apply next year, they see that, hey, I actually listened to what you said and I made these changes. I took these steps, and I'm serious about this role because I'm willing to put in the time to do that. So a lot of different things came out of that rejection, but, I did get into that leadership development program. But, I think even more of that just developed the confidence in myself, developed the public speaking skills, and just be able to be consistent with my weekly videos on LinkedIn. So this is why this is one of my favorite questions to answer. My failure, but, it was actually a blessing in disguise, and I'm actually glad I got rejected that 1 year.
I love that story so much, Stephen, and it really resonates with me because after I had worked as a journalist for 20 years and the last 14 of them at CNN, they didn't renew my contract. And initially it was humiliating and embarrassing because they leaked it to the press and I couldn't even leave with my head held high. They just kind of kicked me to the curb. But the truth is, it was such a gift. I am so unbelievably grateful that they didn't renew my contract, because the truth was, even though it hurt my ego, I had actually been unhappy at CNN for the prior 3.5 years because my son had been born and I never saw him. I was working all the time, but I didn't have the headspace or the courage to leave. I did not have the courage to quit. So it took them not renewing my contract for me to then leave. And guess what? I then had the headspace to think about, well, what else would I want to do? And that's a whole nother story. So thank you so much for sharing that. It is like the quintessential example of how something that seems awful actually has a massive silver lining and ends up being much better for you in the longer run. Last question, Stephen. If you could go back to college, back to San Jose State University, do it all over again, but based on the wisdom you have now, what advice would you give yourself?
Yeah, I would give myself the same advice I tell all the college students I meet with throughout the school year who are still in school. I tell them, go join a club, go join an organization, and go develop those leadership skills. I didn't realize how important that was until 3 years in, after I got rejected from the leadership development program, I decided to join the PAN organization. And because, especially in school, there's a lot less pressure being a part of these organizations, because who do you work with? Just your peers, right? Who do you need to, quote unquote, impress in form of an event? Just your peers, right? You don't have to go talk to a vice president. You don't have to talk to a director. You just organize events. So it's never too early to develop those leadership skills, to develop those public speaking skills, to develop those soft skills. And you really don't learn that in a classroom. You don't learn that, in an engineering class, for example, but you just learn it by being in those situations. You get more and more comfortable with public speaking. You learn how to adapt in different situations. What happens on the day of the event when something goes wrong, when food isn't available, when whatever goes wrong, you're able to adapt and learn from that experience. And that's what I did in my role in the Pan organization. I took on more and more responsibility year after year. But college is a great place to start learning those skills when there's no pressure or there's no severe consequences that come out of it. So that's my number one advice to college students. Join an organization, find a group that you're passionate in, and start developing those leadership skills. And also, looks great on your resume as well.
Has that added benefit. Great advice. You can follow Stephen on LinkedIn. The hashtag Stephen helps you. It's STEPHEN helps you. As you heard, he's got weekly LinkedIn lives and tons of content to help you level up. Stephen, I want to thank you so much for sharing your story, for making so much time at the end of a long day for you with me and the T4C community. You totally crushed it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate you having me on your podcast. Just another opportunity that comes up, right? When you put yourself on LinkedIn and start putting content out there. So again, thank you, Andrea, for all the research you've done. I can't believe you dug to the specific words on my resume. But again, I appreciate all that research, and this was a lot of fun, and I'm glad to share my story with your audience.
Thanks so much for listening to this latest episode of T4C. And if you're interested in learning more about my coaching services for confused college students and recent grads, feel free to check out the Time for Coffee website under the coaching tab at time4coffee.org or text me at 202-236-5712. That's 202-236-5712.